once again.
That's right. Yeah,
Uh,
we're live. I see it. We're good.
yes, I see it. I don't see the title of the stream.
Hey,
But
that's it. It's all right. We're up and running.
we're up and running. We are up and running. That is super awesome. Um, so
So this is
well,
Nuance.
it is nuance.
Thank you all for checking us out. I'm Mike Scala, joined as always by Jay Carter, also known as Timid, the hip hop artist in the chair of BLM Tokyo. What's going on, Jay? The host, I guess, as we all.
Yes, check that out. New
Our
roles,
technical
new
issues.
positions.
Yes, as you can see, my background is different. I am not in New York. I'm actually in Antigua, and so we try to live stream through my page as normal, but received an error. So we're thinking it may be because of the network that we're on, the connection, what have you. So we've got Jay hosting this on his page now, and we're going to share it to my page so that everyone can tune in.
Yeah, yeah. And to get into the spirit, to have that camaraderie with you, I'm in a different location in the house as well. So we
Yeah,
both have different backgrounds.
I flew about 4 hours. You moved like 4 feet.
Right, right, right. So there's, there's a little bit of a similarity there.
Okay, I didn't realize your house was that big. What do you got? A nice view of something out your window there?
Um, of the neighbor's house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
see my little palm tree behind me. It's nice.
nice. Always lovely. Actually, I'm taking a trip this weekend as well. I'll be going up to Tokyo.
Okay. Now, how far
Um,
is that? How long does that take you from where you're at?
by train, it's about 5.5 hours.
Five
By
and a half
flight,
hours.
it's about an hour and a half or
Wow.
less.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's not a short trip.
Right, right.
And part of that is a bullet train, so
I
the
was going to ask
speed.
that. Okay, so even with the bullet train, it takes 5.5 hours?
Well, it's about 2 hours on the bullet train, so I have to transfer train. So it's a special express going to a place where I have to transfer, and then about 2 hours on the bullet train. And so yeah, it still comes out to about 5.5 hours.
Wow.
So yeah, it's not very.
Are you as far as one can possibly be from Tokyo within Japan?
No, absolutely
Oh.
not.
So what is the longest trip, do you think, to get to Tokyo and still be in Japan, never leave Japan?
Um, I would probably say, I mean, barring Okinawa, which would be a flight. I mean, I guess you could take a boat and then it'd be that's the furthest distance
Okay.
wise
Okay.
would be Okinawa. But if you want to stay on the main island, I would say somewhere like Kagoshima, and then you can take a train to Tokyo, and that would run you some hours.
More than 5.5.
Um, well, let me see. I can actually check and see
I
how.
mean, if you're not sure, that means you might be the furthest point.
No, it's about 8 hours on the train.
Okay. Wow.
Um,
But Japan is bigger than people think.
yeah, yeah. You know, it's
So,
not tiny, it's complete. It's small, but not,
well, speaking of small, I was doing some research on Antigua, right? Population
Mm.
wise, it's under 100,000 people, which is
Okay.
more than a New York City council district for some perspective, right?
Okay.
Um, Over 90% of the people in Antigua and Barbuda are in or on Antigua, right? Because there are two islands that make up this country, Antigua and Barbuda. And almost all the people are on Antigua. They had a prime minister's election last year. One of the candidates running was from Barbuda and ran on a platform of secession from Antigua to form its own country and won that island, right? Showing political support for the idea on Barbuda to form its own country, which would be even smaller, right? You think of this as a small country. I think the population is 10,000 or less on Barbuda.
So are we hearing that you may be making a political run in Barbuda? Is that what we're
I mean, you know what? We've talked about, all jokes aside, we've talked about the idea of expanding the political consulting firm, right, that I represent, because there's no reason why it needs to be focused almost entirely in New York. Of course, there are certain steps one would have to take to expand to other states and other countries, even, but it's doable, right? There's no reason why we can't bring our services elsewhere.
True, true, true. That's what's up. That's what's up.
Yeah. And I gotta say, where I'm at right now is really nice. I know when I was in Cancun last year, we talked about the resort and how beautiful that was. This actually gives off a similar kind of vibe, but it's smaller and it's new. And so it comes with its own dynamics, right? The fact that it's new means that there aren't a ton of people here yet. And so that has its benefits, right? Because you're on a beach, there aren't that many people there. It's almost like having your own little private beach. Real nice. Everything is clean. You know what I mean? And so it's really nice. It's not. Yeah, I didn't have a whole lot of experience last year when I did the Cancun trip with all inclusive resorts, and so I didn't know if they were all like that one, right? The
Mm,
vibe is similar, but the Cancun one I went to, I would compare it more to Disney in terms of trying to stimulate your senses, right? Everywhere you go, there's something else. Another
right,
restaurant, the bar, there's a golf
right.
game, right? There's the gym, there's lounges, more bars, more restaurants, everything. Different pools everywhere you look, right? Whereas this is that same type of feel, but scaled down significantly. Right now, they are
Mm,
still doing construction and opening some more things up here, but it's still not going to be quite as massive, at least not now. Maybe they might expand in the future, who knows? But as of now, it's still going to be smaller. But smaller can be nicer too, right? It just depends on what you're going for.
right, absolutely. Is there any radios playing out there in Antigua?
Radios. What do you mean? People playing the radio?
Yeah, just any sort of music bumping, any radio
Oh, I'm on the resort,
broadcast?
so you just hear the DJs play music. There's a live band that comes and they did request, but actually they played kind of an eggshell game, I would say. But I appreciated the hustle. What they did is they came and they said they're here to take your requests, right? Live band. I thought, well, that's pretty impressive. They're going to come and just going to play anything like a DJ just playing. But no, when you sit down, they give you a list of songs that they play, and the list isn't very big, right? There might have been, I don't know, 40 songs on there or something like that. But everyone who goes there gets this list and they all pick out a song. And of course, they're all picking different songs. They're not going to pick a song that they just played. And so basically, the band is playing their set as they were going to play anyway, but
Hmm.
it makes you feel like you're picking their songs. But then they make it special because they say this is dedicated to such and such. This person picked this for their loved one, or you know, I mean, to celebrate their anniversary or whatever it is. And so they kind of involve everyone in it and get you all engaged in it. But it's kind of funny how they make it look like you're picking the songs that they're playing when really you're not. You're just picking a song from a list and you're not going to pick what everyone else picked already, right? And so they're going to play their songs regardless.
Right. It's just to kind of give you the illusion of choice.
Right, right. Which is actually kind of funny. Well, no, and there's the DJ playing music by the pool, very poppy club types, party type songs. Um, I did look up though. You asked about radio. There is one apparently broadcast TV station on Antigua called ABS. And all of the other channels that you get are from Miami, right? Like if you watch the news, local CBS News, whatever, you get in the Miami news. But they have one channel in Antigua, and they were playing old movies. They played Look Who's Talking from 1989 last night on
Wow.
there. And it's funny because I was watching that thinking, when this movie came out, it seemed innovative that the baby was talking. And you look at it now, and like, yeah, so they're not even moving the baby's lips. It's just Bruce Willis doing a voiceover while the baby is just shown on picture. But when it came out, it was like so interesting. The baby was talking.
Yeah.
How far technology has improved, right? I mean, people look at that now, they would think it was so lame.
But it was a good movie.
That was nice. Nice.
Yeah.
One thing I gotta say though, which I don't know if it's just a now thing, because I turned it on yesterday and again today. All of the audio and video don't sync up on that channel. And so it's a little distracting to watch. You'll see a character, any character, not just the baby, right? Because the baby doesn't move its lips, but any character on screen will move their lips, and then 2 or 3 seconds later, 2 or 3 whole seconds later, the audio plays. You think I've synced that up a little better.
Wow, that's crazy. Like old kung fu movies.
Right,
When
right. And that's what I thought at first when I watched it. I thought maybe I was looking at an overdub. Maybe it was
right,
right, but no, this is the original look who's talking. It wasn't like it was originally shot in a different language and had a dub English in, right? It was an English made movie.
right. That's
Uh,
crazy.
yeah, yeah.
So
But good times, it's good to check out new places, and I like
absolutely.
explore the dynamics of the area. Doing a catamaran ride around the island tomorrow, so get to see a little bit more of the island.
All right. Sounds like a good plan.
Yeah, yeah.
Hope you
Speaking of,
guys have a good time.
yeah, no,
Speaking of,
I was gonna say, speaking of
I
good,
sense a transition.
right? Speaking of good plans or not, right? We don't know, but we'll
Ooh, that
talk
was
about
smooth.
it. The governor here, I was gonna say here in New York, but the governor of New York announced that congestion pricing is being halted or paused, as she's calling it. Not eliminated, but people are reacting to it as though it is the death of congestion pricing. So I know it's been a controversial topic, right? We've talked about it on here before, and the session in New York is ending. It just ended now, right? It goes from January till June. And so this all needed to be worked out by the end of session. Now the lawmakers will go home and work in their districts exclusively until January, right? So with the end of session, it was announced that this was not being implemented, at least not this year. Some people are happy. Some people, I know our local assembly member in Queens applauded the decision, right? Many people who drive obviously are happy with this because they don't want to pay the extra tolls. But you have people who are self-described transit advocates who take public transit exclusively, who are saying that this is the death of New York. I mean, they're really going hard on
The
this.
death of New York?
They're really going in. They're saying that the governor is telling New York to drop dead. I saw on my timeline before, I was looking at some people who are transit advocates. They're posting up these political cartoons. The governor's, sticking it to New York in different ways. They're treating it like it's an attack on transportation.
I don't, but I don't understand how it would be the death of New York when it's been what New York has been doing. Like it's going back to the
Well, they
standards.
thought, I mean, even the New York Times, I think I sent you here. You can pull this up. I know New York Times is behind the paywall, but there's a New York Times article that came out that said, "What made New York great? Leadership. Where is it now? The city was built on bold ideas. Suddenly, Governor Hochul paused a game changing plan to fight congestion. Can we still do big things in a polarized moment?" And the first question, I mean, the first sentence of the article here is, "Have we lost the ability to do big things?" And so there were people, I guess, who were celebrating this and the fact that at the last minute, the rug got pulled has them all getting dramatic about it, right? Saying, I thought we were on the verge of doing something good, and here we go. This is
Yeah.
nasty. Of course, you have
That's
people also looking at it from an environmental point of view.
right.
There is some merit in that. We've talked about the idea. Of course, you want to reduce cars on the road, generally speaking, right?
Right.
And get more people taking public transit as a goal ultimately. But I don't know. I think some of the people on this, they're using that as a tactic. It feels to me a little manipulative the way it's being discussed, because it's almost like they're trying to shame you or guilt you into supporting it by saying that if you don't support this plan, you hate the environment.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's that I mean that New York Times headline sounds a little ridiculous. And did they give reason why she's pausing the
Yeah, she said that we haven't fully recovered from the pandemic yet economically. She's really making an economic argument here, saying that New Yorkers are being hit with high prices, right? Talking about the price of food and healthcare, raising a family, just getting by. We found that article not long ago saying, what was it, 50% of New Yorkers struggle to pay their bills?
Right, right, right.
So
I mean
that's
it
what
make
she's saying.
it's a
Yes,
valid argument.
absolutely, right? And she's saying that people are not in a financial position to be able to afford this. Um, the MTA, of course, is upset because of the funding that they were anticipating, right? they're not going to be getting that. So that needs to be made up, or there's discussion of how can you close that funding hole. And the governor
Right.
said it's unimaginative to believe that's the only way to raise the revenue. I mean, there are other ways to do it.
I
And
agree with that.
we talked about the carrot versus the stick, right? If the goal is get more people on mass transit, and that's a laudable goal, you have to make the mass transit system more attractive. You can't just do it by trying to punish people. I mean, that's going to make people leave New York or have to pay, or they're not going to be able to pay. Maybe you know what I mean. You have to create attractive alternatives that you're not going to scare people, especially in areas of the city where you don't have good and built up sufficiently mass transit. I mean, what are you going to do in South Queens or parts of
Right.
Brooklyn or Staten Island? I mean, it really any Manhattan and parts of Brooklyn are really the only areas, and maybe parts of the Bronx, where it's feasible to expect everyone to take public transit all the time. But most of the city really isn't built up that way. Our mass transit system is so far behind. How are we going to expect people to just give up their cars? It's not a realistic option. But when you see the battle here, the people who are so pro congestion pricing don't have that perspective. They're not coming at it from, well, there are parts of the city where people rely on cars. They're coming
Right.
at it. Maybe they live in Midtown Manhattan, or you know what I mean, or maybe they live in a part of the city where they can do that. Just take the
Right.
subway everywhere, take a bus everywhere, and they don't have that perspective. They don't know people, I don't think, or care about people who have to take a car or have to be driven places. So I think people are in their own little bubbles, and they're not
Yeah.
right. They're not seeing what the other people are going through, and it's really on display here, where there's even a lack of empathy because people don't even understand or want to understand people's situations.
Right. Absolutely. And I agree with that idea. Like there's not one solution. And regardless of why she's pausing it and if it's, maybe there's not enough support for it, the reasons are really valid. I don't think most places have fully recovered from COVID financially. And people are being hit, not just in the city, but even just around the country in general. Prices have
Yeah. Around the
skyrocketed
world.
and
I mean,
everything.
let's not act like this is a United States problem. We know it's not a
Right,
New York State problem. It's a worldwide problem.
right. And so, I mean, yeah, it's not a good, it could be a bad time for something like this. In the chat, we got a comment saying that they need to rethink it. Things are already expensive here. People can't afford it.
Yeah.
Small business owners definitely can't afford it. But we do need what? We definitely need money to fix the subway.
Right.
So,
Right. And that's the thing. All right. Let's say you invested money in upgrading the subway system, right? Of course, we fight for the Queens link, but in general, right? Whatever lines you're putting in, if you're making the system more connected and you're upgrading the infrastructure, then what you're doing is you're incentivizing more people to take mass transit, and you are actually taking some cars off the road, and that's reducing congestion, that's reducing traffic. So it's a
right,
win-win for everybody, right?
right.
As opposed to
Yeah,
just punish people or frustrate them out of their cause.
right. And I think another thing that could be helpful is, deal with again, revamping the system, cleaning up the area, making it more hospitable, I guess, for people going through, but, deal with the timetables too. Let's, make it more punctual. One thing that the Japan system has is this incredible punctuality.
Okay.
And when it says it's going to be this time, it's going to be this time. I just had this experience last week when I went out of town and I was coming back on the last train and the train I guess there was a earthquake in one part of the country, so my connecting train was going to be delayed, or my train was going to be delayed 30 minutes. So I went to connect somewhere else, and that train was due to arrive at 36 minutes past the hour. My next train was due to leave at 39 minutes past the hour, and this was a slim margin. But I looked at my watch, and the train pulled into the station at 36 minutes past the hour, exactly how it was, which
Mhm.
still was slim, but allowed me to make my next train.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
So if you can count on some of the the timetables,
That's
that
true.
could help
That's
people,
true.
especially people going in the city for meetings and work
Right,
and things
right.
like
No,
that.
look, I've dealt with this going to the city from Howard Beach. You take the A train, try to get to the city. They say, well, it should be under an hour to get in,
Right.
right? But it's so unreliable that if you have to be there at a certain time, you
Right.
can't rely on you getting there in that time. You really have to plan for delays. Oftentimes it'll be 90 minutes, sometimes up to 2 hours. And so,
That's crazy.
yeah, so think about that. I mean, what does that do to someone who has to commute into work every day if you're going to try to rely on that? So that means
Right.
that
It means you
if it
leave
is running on
extra
time, you
early.
can be there an hour early, right? But
Right.
it's definitely taking time out of your day. It's taking money out of your pocket. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's a major inconvenience. Um, we know that time is money. So,
Yeah.
but this is all part of upgrading the system. Money should be spent on upgrading our system. We're so behind. Our infrastructure in New York City is so behind. It's laughably behind. I mean, I go anywhere else in the US and the system is better. And that shouldn't be. The DC
Right. I mean,
the metro system is so much better.
you know, it seems to have just been left for far too long without proper upgrade. Um, and every time it's like MTA just wants more and more money. It's like, but what are you doing? I don't get it.
Right. And the bridges as well, right? We fought for the removal of the toll on the Cross Bay Bridge. Now we have it where you get the rebate. But why are we still being told? I mean, this is the thing, right? Congestion pricing is about really more tolls, and
Right.
for people who have to drive and commute by car, we're asking why are we still being told on these old bridges that have been, supposed to be to recoup, I guess, initially the cost of the bridge and maybe maintain the bridge, but really what they're doing is they're taking the money for the bridges and they're just putting that in the MTA's coffers and it's being used elsewhere in the system.
Right.
But we just need a better system for people, and we need to be thinking of everyone, not just certain people, right? So, and that goes both ways, whether you're a driver or you take mass transit, right? This is a city where, again, many people have to drive, many people are able to take public transit, but it shouldn't be us versus them, on either side. It
Right.
should be how can we work
Yeah.
collaboratively to make it better for everyone.
Yeah. I mean, and I've always questioned, the MTA. Like, I don't know if there's a private or an independent auditing that takes place. I think there should be. Like, I just know when I moved to New York, I remember the news that the MTA had a $1 billion surplus. And then within the next year, they were trying to raise rates. And it's like, how does that make sense? So I think there needs to be an audit on what's going on there, so that you can look at these other options to
Well,
potentially
yeah.
increase ridership, to reduce the traffic, to make it better system for the
Okay,
residents.
what do you think about this? Because part of this discussion now is that millions of dollars, I forget the number, we can look it up, but a very large number, right? It's in the high millions, is being lost due to fare evasion every year. And so there's some talk
Right.
about increased enforcement of fare evasion, but you gotta be careful, right? Because there's also a conversation about not overly punishing people, right? Not being too punitive. And
Right.
so you have to figure out where to draw that line, right? Because you don't want to give everyone a criminal record and ruin their prospects of ever getting a job by jumping a turnstile. But
Right.
you want to make sure that people aren't taking advantage and you're not losing all this money to fare evasion, because that's one of the reasons why you do see things like the rates always going up, all the money that's
Sure.
just being bled out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely needs to be looked at. Maybe some monitoring. Um, I wonder where those fare evasion, jumping the turnstile happens. Is it in places that are unmonitored? Is it places that have someone in a booth? You know what I mean?
Happens
Like
there.
which,
No, it happens pretty much everywhere. Even when you have someone in a booth, it's become somewhat of a joke. You'll see people straight up telling the person in the booth, "I'm going to jump that," and then just say, "Oh, it's not really that they do about it."
that's definitely some New York boldness. That's hilarious. It's yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be addressed. And it could be, some people may be hopping the turnstile because they can't afford it. Um, in some ways, things have kept going up.
So
But there's
here's
got to be more options than just congestion pricing. There's got to be
right,
more
right.
solutions looked at.
No, and I agree with the governor when she says that it's unimaginative to say that that's the only solution here. There are other
Yeah,
things you can do.
absolutely.
People get this tunnel vision, right, where they had their heart set on that, and now they're saying that's the only thing that you could possibly do.
Right. Yeah, and that's not even true. That can't be true. So,
Right, right. And it's also telling that now that this is being paused, there was a big panic over, well, how else is the MTA going to get money when that
right.
wasn't how it was sold to us in the first place, right? It wasn't like this is all an MTA cash grab, right?
Right.
It was supposed to be, well, this is going to be good for X, Y, and Z. It's going to reduce congestion. That's why it's called congestion pricing, right? And it's going to do all these great things for the environment and everything. But now it's a bit all about again the MTA's bottom line.
But I've seen a lot of critics, even, when it was proposed that and they assumed or looked at it as it was an MTA cash grab, even though it wasn't being said as an MTA cash grab.
Right, right.
It's
So I
like
did,
you've said the quiet part out loud now.
yeah, so, right, exactly. Now all of a sudden, people are jumping right to that. Well, how else are the MTA going to get money? It says
Right.
this is from Sitting the State. I just looked up the stat on this. Bus fare evasion cost the MTA $315 million last year alone.
That's
And
crazy.
subway fare evasion cost the MTA 285 million last year. So
It's
you add
it's
that up, you're at over $500 million.
What's surprising to me about that is not that there is the evasion, but how much of it on the buses? Like on the train station, I can see because there's nobody there in a lot of stations. You can't possibly man every station. I guess you could, but it's not done that way. But on the bus, like how is that?
Yeah.
How do you calculate that? How do you know that?
Well, I guess
How is that possible?
they look at yeah, right. It shouldn't be, but I guess you can
How do
look
you
at
get past the
the
bus
people who
driver opening the door?
total people who rode the system versus fares that were collected, right? They know how much money they should have gotten.
Yeah, but they don't have a counter really for on the buses. And
No,
then how do you get past the bus driver?
they've
Like you
got
gotta,
cameras. They've got. I'm sure they can calculate how many people took the bus.
I think, I don't know if there's an individual
You could
count.
do if it's not precise, it could be estimated pretty easily.
I guess,
You could look at peak times over a month, 2 months, or per
but
season,
how
or
is
something like that,
I still
and how
want to
many
know
people
how they're
take it
getting
per
past.
day, and this hour and that hour, and then multiply. You know what I mean? It's not might not be down precise down to the person or to
Right.
the dollar, but it's a pretty good estimate.
How are they getting past the bus driver though? I
The,
mean,
well, the,
unless,
obviously the point here is that it's not being enforced, right? They're not. I mean, that's the problem. People are just doing it brazenly, and they're not being stopped.
right. I mean, unless they're jumping on in the back when they open up the back door to let people out, and then people are jumping on, and you can't see it when it's crowded.
All kinds of stuff happens, but I think a lot of it's being done right in their faces too.
You think the bus driver is pulling up, opening the front door, and people just walking on, be like, "Yeah, I'm going. Screw you."
Pretty much.
That's wild. Um, yeah, I mean, it's obvious some things need to be looked at and changed. All parts of the system, not just
Right.
congestion pricing. Um, the system needs to be upgraded, needs to be made more accessible and affordable, and
We're
make it an
tracking, right?
attractive option.
That's the whole thing. If it's like they're working backwards. If the goal is to get more people to take mass transit, then make mass transit better, as opposed to right trying to reverse engineer a way to get people onto the train. It doesn't make any sense.
Right. And to be fair, New York has pretty extensive coverage in mass transit, especially compared to most places in the rest of
Well,
the
but
country.
not all of New York, though, right? Midtown Manhattan, yes,
Right, right. Yeah, 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 yeah.
right. Much of the
Yeah.
outer boroughs, no, and some of that is by design, right? I mean, a lot of
Right.
people in these neighborhoods want that more suburban feel. They want to be more
Sure.
like Long Island or Westchester or something where
Right.
You have a house with a lawn and streets and people are driving. And so,
Sure, sure, sure. Well,
right.
we've talked about it
That's,
before. Like the
yeah,
system is basically designed to get people into Manhattan.
right.
Yeah.
Right. And even in Queens, all of the subways are east-west. And again, like you said, they're designed to take you from Queens into Manhattan. There is no
Right.
north-south subway line to get you
Right.
to northern Queens, southern Queens, right? And that would even help with Manhattan connectivity because then you can
That
get
would help a lot.
from Rockaway or Howard Beach to Midtown without having to snake through downtown. So,
Yeah.
yeah, and that's a simple thing. I mean, obviously it costs money, but everything costs money, right? It's about what
Yeah.
investment are you going to make in the
Right.
system to make it better in the long term. And it's pretty simple conceptually to say why are we only drawing lines from east to west? Why can't we draw some lines from north to south?
Right. And that would help immensely for cutting down on the congestion, especially people that that may need to get from one side to the other and have to go into Manhattan. They wouldn't have to do that anymore. Um and that would cut down on the train congestion there and the traffic congestion for people and be like, well, I just got to drive then.
Yeah,
It would definitely help.
right.
So we'll see how it
We've talked
goes.
about all of this, right? We've talked about the economic opportunity, the economic growth, right?
Right.
And that brings in tax revenue. That brings in more money to the MTA, obviously, more people are taking in the system. So it's not a matter of having to raise taxes, right? Raise tax rates. It's a matter of generating more revenues by incentivizing people to use the system more and not just use the mass transit system, but then create businesses, right? If and also allow people to patronize those businesses easier.
Right.
If you have better connectivity, now you can start a business somewhere and get more customers from other places in the city, right? Maybe it wouldn't be considered too far to go to a certain neighborhood to have dinner or to go shopping or whatever, right? Because it's easier to get there now.
Right. Right. So that should probably be the poll this week.
Right. We do want to emphasize the governor is saying that it's paused. The governor is not saying it's eliminated. Some people are receiving it that way, and we'll see what happens going forward. But I think as a political point, she said, listen, I know I'm getting pushback on this, but I could have eliminated it altogether. That was on the table. I didn't do that. And so she's trying to appease those who still favor it by saying it's technically just paused, but it's paused indefinitely, right? So there's no
Right.
set date where it's going to start. Just as of now, it's not happening. So the poll question of the week is, do you agree with Governor Hochul's decision to pause the implementation of congestion pricing? Let me say that again. Take two.
Take two.
Do you agree with Governor Hochul's decision to pause the implementation of congestion pricing?
Good. That was a great one.
Yeah. So
Brent,
people
break
say,
for
oh,
lunch.
all right. Speaking of polls, we had a poll last week, right?
Yes, we did have a poll last week. Um, Last week we were talking about Donald Trump and his convictions, and we were asking him, do you believe Donald Trump will ever serve a prison sentence? Not
Right.
should he
Right.
serve a prison sentence. Do you believe he will serve a prison sentence? Because that's what people have been looking to see, like, will it actually happen or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Then you might have people on both sides of the partisan divide coming together on an answer. I mean, obviously people think optimistically, right? So there's going to be a lot of people who say should and will are the same, but you may have people who think he shouldn't, for example, but that he will, or vice versa.
right. And so yeah, the results here were 41% said yes, he will, 59% said no, he won't.
Okay.
Um, and I'm kind of split. Like I don't think he will. I think he should. I don't think he will. I
Right.
mean, he was found guilty of the 34 counts. He's been held in contempt of court 10 times. He's violated his gag order multiple times. Like he's basically thumbing his nose at all of the system. And on top of committing these crimes, I don't think he should just get
Well,
off with like a warning.
right. But let me ask you this. Okay, let's assume he is not sentenced to any time as a result of this conviction. Do you think if he were convicted again in the future, if he would then have to do time, or if it would be the same deal? Basically, he could be convicted of a ton of different crimes in different states and different courts, and he will never be sentenced to jail.
Right. It's at some point you would think a judge would be, compound what's going on,
Yeah.
showing it shows a pattern of behavior.
The first inquiry is always, are you a first time offender?
Right. And so he's a first time offender, but this is still
Right. He's
34.
actually a 34th time offender. But even if you're giving him the benefit of the doubt and saying, okay, but that's still the first time because it's the first conviction, right? Of
Right.
really it's 34, but let's take it as 34 and one. All right. Now go to Georgia. Now do the
Right.
federal case. Right. Now do any of these other ones. So at a certain point, you can't say it's a first time.
Right. Right. So one of the comments here was I go back and forth on that several times a day. I so want him to, even for a few days, but I'm not sure he ever will. Between the appeals and everything, the chances are slimmer every day.
Right. And if you were to be elected in November, the chances become a lot more slim.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, definitely, especially some of the other cases and whatnot.
Right.
Now, another,
The federal one, absolutely. But even the
right,
state cases,
the state ones would be a little bit trickier, but probably would still skate on those as well. Like realistically, I don't think he should be walking around as a free man right now. Um,
right. And we talked about this last week when we set up this poll.
right,
If he were just an ordinary citizen, he would be a much more likely candidate to be sentenced to time based on
right,
all the factors described. Like you mentioned, the contempt of court, the fact that there are multiple indictments pending in other states and also
right.
at the federal level. I mean, imagine that. Imagine if it was you, Jay, or any random person convicted of 34 felonies. Okay, nonviolent first time, fine. But held in contempt of court 10 times with multiple pending indictments throughout the country. You think you go
Violated the gag order
right
before and after the conviction.
and call the judge a demon to top it off? I mean, you think you're going to prison or not?
I would be, yeah, you'd have to start forwarding my mail there immediately.
Right.
They would definitely lock me up. Now, someone in the comments said, I'm not sure that an average citizen would do prison time for this, which is very delusional. I think an average citizen absolutely would do.
Yeah. When you compound all these factors, right? That's
Right.
the part. If you're just talking about first time nonviolent felon offense and leave it at that, yeah, most likely not. Still, sometimes they do, right? But if you take away the contempt of court, you take away the other pending indictments, you take away the violation of the gag order, you take away attacking the witnesses and attacking the judge, take all that other stuff away, and you just look at the first time nonviolent conviction, that
Right.
reduces the likelihood that even an ordinary citizen would get prison time. It still can happen, and
Right.
it is possible. But when you take all the factors into account, I think it becomes a much more likely scenario.
Right. Now, one of the comments saying that civil penalties and white collar felonies are never going to do the trick. He would have to be tried and convicted of the big treasonous stuff like stealing and selling classified documents and plotting to overthrow the election. But so far, more than 3 years in, and basically out of time, we can't seem to try him for those things, let alone convict or sentence him.
Right. And it seems like the latest update in the Georgia case is that won't resume until after the election because the decision to remove the prosecutor is being appealed. We covered that. Remember
Right.
the
And that's a stalling tactic.
exactly. We talked about that back then. And so the court decided that that prosecutor was able to stay on if she
Right.
fired the lawyer who was put in charge of the case, which was her ex romantic partner, right? And
Right.
so that decision is being appealed. And so that case cannot resume until the result of that appeal, which is going to be several months. And we know that the Georgia case, therefore, cannot resume until at least after the election.
Yeah, I think, and we've talked about again that that's definitely a stalling tactic, but also to me a failure on the prosecutor's part for even
Or she shouldn't have
making
maintained that relationship.
having that situation around her in
Yeah.
such a serious case. Yeah.
Right, right. People lose sight of that sometimes. I mean, this is really an historic moment and an historic case, right? I mean, this is something that's going to be in textbooks years from
Yeah.
now.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, and to not take that seriously, to not give it the solemn attention that it deserves, right? I mean, you should be having a relationship with the lawyer that you're putting in charge of the case with all that at stake.
Yeah. So, and just yeah. Now, Trump had been saying, I guess in social media, that he was facing 187 years, because each one of these
One,
is 4 years. However, apparently there is a legal constraint in New York, and you can probably speak to this better than I, that the cumulative sentence for this type of felony is capped at 20 years. So I guess the max that he could face is 20 years.
that's the absolute max. And
Right.
I would never expect that because I wouldn't expect him to be sentenced consecutively.
I would be
I
fine
would
with
expect
20
it to be
years.
I would expect it to be a concurrent sentence, meaning, like let's say you're
Right.
gonna do 34. If you're gonna give, for example, 1 year for each of the 34 counts, it wouldn't be 34 years. It would just be the 1 year because you're serving all 34 at the same time.
Yeah. I'd be okay with the 20 years though for him. I'd be fine with that.
Possibility of parole in 2044.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
So real
I'm
quick,
not, you know.
all right, we have to
What?
move on.
Yeah,
Really quickly, I did want to mention, I saw today that Hunter Biden was convicted.
right.
His gun case, he apparently lied on his application when he was applying for a gun permit and didn't disclose his drug use, which is not
Mm.
something that's often prosecuted, but it was, and he's convicted. So he is actually facing time for this. And I find it interesting. I guess it's inevitable in a sense, but it really is wild to me that the president is saying that a pardon is off the table. He's not even considering pardoning his son for this. I guess politically it would kill him, but still, it's your son. I mean, what a wild family dynamic that must be.
I think Biden's in the right on that. Like he shouldn't pardon him for that. Um,
Right.
it would definitely undermine his credibility for one.
Sure.
Um, it would also show that there's separate rules for the so-called elites and the average person, which is what we're trying to prove in this stuff with Trump,
Right.
that there's not, that everyone has to follow the law. You're not above it, no matter what your connections are. And if Biden were to pardon Hunter, if Joe were to pardon Hunter, um, yeah, he'd have no kind of credibility
Yeah.
anymore.
And it would detract immensely from the Trump legal troubles.
Sure, sure, absolutely. Because then his supporters and his team, they can just take that position that, oh, well, look, this is definitely a witch hunt because
Right.
look, on this side, he's letting this guy go, but over here, he's trying to bury him under the jail.
Right. And people aren't really talking about the fact that it's his own son and it's a federal case, right? So he technically controls the Justice Department. I'm
Right.
not saying he was one who ordered the prosecution, but he certainly is
Right.
in charge of that whole operation on some level. He's letting this proceed against his own son. So when
And
people say that somehow he is trying to persecute Trump or some kind of witch hunt, or he's just going after his political opponents, he's letting his own son be convicted here.
right. And listen, I think that's the right thing to do. I think we can definitely speculate on how it would play out if Trump were president and one of his children were facing
Right.
this type of case.
Right.
Yeah, it would absolutely be pardoned. He would not let them. I mean, we're
And
speculating, of course, but
yeah,
I
yeah. It seems
don't
it's
think he would
character.
let. Yeah,
Yeah. And now he's saying that if he were to be reelected, he's going to go after his opponents the same way they allegedly went after him, meaning he's not even taking the underlying criminal act into account here. He's just
no,
saying, listen, they went after me legally, so I'm going to do the same to them. I'm going to seek revenge and retribution on them,
Right.
which is a scary thing to be saying. And again, it shows utter disregard for the legal system and the rule of law.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. So,
I just I
yeah.
that Thanksgiving has to be awkward though with Joe.
Um, I would imagine it would be, but can you imagine before that happened when it came out and when, Biden's in his face like, dude, I'm the president. Why would you do this? Like, what is going on
Well, it
with
wasn't
you?
when he was president though. This is dating back to 2018.
Yeah, but he's been he was
He
vice
was the vice
president.
president
He
previously.
was, he's been in Congress this whole time. Like,
Right.
come on. So, but I mean, listen, I think people also forget that, and it's things have gotten so polarized, but remember the Bush girls,
Mhm.
they were wild. We're talking cocaine and all that, or whatever it was. And now
Yeah.
one of them's like the host, like a beloved host on a morning show or something like that. So it doesn't necessarily indicate, it's not indicative of the parent or the person in office all the time, but hey, it's crazy.
All
All
right.
I'm gonna
Well,
say, all I want to add before we
yeah.
we wrap that up, Obama's kids, Clinton's kids didn't do anything.
Right. Except who was it? Malia had some questionable dating decisions I had heard.
There's some, yeah, but yeah, all kids have questionable dating decisions.
All right. So with the last few minutes we have, we mentioned that the legislative session ended in New York, and we wanted to take a quick look at some of the bills that either passed or failed to pass session and
I'm
give our
just a bill.
thoughts.
I'm
Kind of like a
only
lightning round, right? We're just going to take a look at some blurbs here and figure out if we think this is good or bad.
I'm just a bill. I'm only a bill, and I'm
The link
sitting here on Capitol Hill.
is going to cost us.
Say what?
So that's going to cost us. Well, wait for the lawyers to come on board.
Oh, we're gonna have to pay royalties.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. The first bill, algorithmic feed regulations, passed.
Okay.
Only one person voted against this one. This legislation is aimed at protecting kids online from addictive algorithmic feeds. It's called the Safe for Kids Act. First bill of its kind to pass in the nation. It would greatly restrict minors' access to such feeds without parental consent. The version that finally passed differed slightly from the bill that was proposed, of course. Lawmakers removed the private right to action, which would have allowed parents to sue the social media companies for violating the law. So they can't do that. Kind of makes it a little toothless, I guess. It also leaves one of the most crucial aspects of the legislation, age verification, up to the attorney general to figure out through regulations. Privacy advocates have warned about potentially invasive verification practices. So this sounds similar to what we talked about in Florida,
Right.
but
Right.
not quite as expansive as that one. And it seems like it got walked back even more in New York.
But I'm looking at this the way this is written here, about this algorithmic feed regulations, basically that you said that protecting kids without the approval of, restrict minors' access to such feeds without parental consent. Um, every one of these feeds are algorithms.
Right,
I
right.
mean, you're talking YouTube, you're talking
Oh, sure.
Facebook, everything. All of them are algorithms. And so I wonder what they're going to, how they're going to implement this. Like everything is on an algorithmic feed.
Right, right. And I don't think this is aimed at all algorithmic feeds. I could be wrong, but the way I'm reading this, it says addictive algorithmic feeds.
But that's the point. That's the point of the algorithm, is to make you engage more. That's
See,
the point.
right, but I'm reading this as certain types of feeds. Like they're going to draw some kind of classification in here. Maybe if it takes advantage of certain technologies or is programmed in a certain way that's considered especially harmful. That's how
Right.
I'm interpreting this, and
Yeah, that
it might need to be worked out. Again,
yeah.
where is the line to be drawn?
Yeah, because all of it. It's the point
Sure.
of making the algorithm is to make it addictive, to make more people stay on the platform and interact on the platform for the ad revenue and generation. Like that's the whole point of the things. So, and even in the apps and the games, like the way that they're designed is to make it the most addicting as possible, so you
Sure.
spend more time doing it. So I
Right.
wonder how they're going to apply that.
Right. And exactly which types of feeds are they really targeting here?
Right. All right. So,
So, yeah, so I guess that's TBD, right? We have to see exactly how this is going to be implemented. It does leave
right.
in age verification, but again, it doesn't outline how to work that out. It says it's up to the attorney general. So,
Right. And what's the age? Is it 18 and under? It says children.
well, it says yeah, minors. I'm assuming it's 18 and under.
Yeah. But I guess it
Uh,
doesn't matter. Everyone would still have to be
that's the thing. It's feedback.
verified
Everybody. So good luck, Tish,
legally.
on
Yeah.
that one. And yes, we did talk about the potentially invasive
Right.
privacy aspects of this.
All right.
Scrolling down here, New York City red light cameras passed. The legislature authorized the city to greatly expand its red light camera program. Uh-oh, revenues. The bill will quadruple the number of cameras and intersections around the city from 150 to 600.
Mm.
So Big Brother
That's a
is
lot.
watching, Jay.
Big Brother is seriously watching. You know, yeah, I'm not a fan of that.
Me
I
neither.
don't like cameras everywhere like that. Now, they do have benefits. One, because it can catch violators. It can also be a benefit to safety. But just being surveilled on a constant basis is crazy to me.
Right. And it becomes a matter of, I guess, what is done with that information and how is it used.
Right. And who has access to it?
Yeah, yeah. And also,
Um,
by the way, all of these cameras can be dangerous because it doesn't take into account the conditions on the road. And so
right,
sometimes if you're driving, decisions have to be made
right,
for everyone's safety, right? But what
right,
ends up happening is if you know you're going to get a ticket from that camera, the camera is not making a judgment call. You're going to get a
right,
ticket if you go through it, or if you have to speed up at a certain point, or whatever the case may be, it leads to drivers making reckless decisions because they're trying to
right,
avoid those tickets, right? And it can cause more accidents. I mean, I've witnessed stuff like that, but accidents happening or almost happening because drivers were so focused on the cameras that they were not making the proper decisions behind the wheel that were appropriate for the condition.
right. Yeah, I'm not
I
a
mean, think of a
fan of it.
situation where there's an emergency vehicle, or you know what I mean, or a car
Right,
broken down on the side, or someone tailgating you. Certain,
right,
right? Sometimes you got to do certain things, get around people, move around, speed up. You don't want to be in someone's blind spot, for example, right? That's dangerous. But the
yeah,
camera there, it's going to just ticket you almost indiscriminately. Whereas in
right,
theory, a police officer would be able to see that, like, okay, he's just trying to get past that bus or that truck.
right. And it also sets up this environment where it's like you're trying to catch people. It's
Right,
like
right,
instead of just letting people live, like it's like everyone is a potential
right.
person to be caught.
Criminal,
And
right? Yeah, it's guilty until proven
yeah.
innocent. All right, last one because we're out of time here, but this is interesting. Repeal of lifetime felon jury ban. This is apparently a tribute to retiring Assembly member Jeff Aubrey. This was his bill. It allows people with felony convictions to serve on juries. Under current law, those with felony convictions receive a lifetime ban from serving on a jury, one of the few remaining restrictions placed on formerly incarcerated individuals in New York State. So,
Now, I think it's a good thing for formerly incarcerated people's rights.
right.
Question though, for
Well,
those formerly
do they
incarcerated
want the question
people,
is, do they want to be on a jury? Does anyone
that's
want
what
to
I said.
be?
For those formerly incarcerated people, is this really a good thing? Was this something that they feel like, oh, at least I don't have to do jury duty? Well,
Yeah, no, but I think it's a good thing
yeah,
because you don't want to treat people who have come out of the system as though they're still criminals, right? You want to
right,
give their rights back and allow them to participate in society the same way we all do.
Right. Absolutely. So, and you know what? It also brings another perspective into the jury pool of someone who's been through the system and experienced what it's like on the other side.
Yeah, I was thinking about that, but if you're an attorney, you might want someone who is a former felon on your jury. You might not, depending on the
Right.
case. But are there going to be questions now about discriminating against someone because of their status?
Probably. I would imagine that's gonna, former, and I think it'd be just like any other jury selection where they look at, the attributes of the different juror and decide if that's someone that we either can convince or not convince.
Right.
And so
And
that's
right.
going to be a question. Oh, well, he's a former felon. So, oh, okay, well, let's
You
think
think it's
about
a
that.
valid do you think it's a valid question? Because that's not like race-based discrimination, for example, or sex-based discrimination, right? This is
Right.
based on behavior or alleged behavior or status. Do you
That's a
think
good question.
it's an acceptable form of discrimination, or if something should be done to curb that?
That's a good question. I think it's something that should be definitely thought about and talked about.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. All right.
so,
Well, Jay, we are out of time. Would you like to give us our bottom line?
let's see. Well, very good. Look at that, right on time. So, oh, what would I say on the bottom line? I think the bottom line is calling back to Governor Hochul's decision and bringing up this idea that there is basically more than one way to skin a cat, so to speak. We have to not get so locked into one path, one tunnel vision, and think about the different possibilities and bring those different possibilities to the table. We can do some of everything if it's possible, or it could be possible to be helpful. And
Mhm.
we should allow those possibilities to come to the table without getting just locked into one thing. So,
Absolutely. Be imaginative, right?
yeah. So,
And
ooh,
also,
what is that?
life's a beach.
Life speech. Yeah.
All right.
Well,
So
enjoy your beach, and where can they find us?
we thank everyone for checking us out. They can find us everywhere podcasts are available. We're, of course, live on Facebook every Tuesday from 7 to 8 Eastern time, approximately. And we're on YouTube, Nuance with Mike Scala and Jay Carter, as well as Instagram at Nuance Show.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So I guess we'll end here for the night. Enjoy your vacation and your resort.
Yes, thank you for that. Again, thank you all for checking us out. As always, we've got work to do, and we'll catch you next time.